Some of you have come to a number of these. What we're really hoping to do is to support people in the parish in various positions of leadership, and also through you to provide some material that you could use with whatever group you belong to or lead. I think it's really important that we invest in each other and build, because building community is always, to some extent, about building leadership, not just in the official leadership, but in each one of us. So, and Nate tonight, I think, is going to speak about an area which is, I think, is increasingly important. One aspect has always been important, which is the building of community, and Nate, bless him, is an absolute charm at that. But also, it's about how we reach out from our community and how we engage with people who are not currently or yet part of our community. And the church, Christ Church, has always been a place where, we just do things quite well and people just come, right? We never have to put any effort into that aspect. But I think increasingly, as the years go by, the whole church is going to have to think more intentionally about how we reach out to people, because a lot of people just have no experience of the church at all. So building community is partly about what we do together, but it's also about how we reach out. So Nate, I'm delighted you're going to do this, and Nate's, as I say, he's one of these people that does it kind of naturally, really, but I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. Good evening. Good to be with you guys. Fantastic dinner. This was great. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Lord God, you call us to life in all its fullness, following the path set out by Jesus, your Son. As we reflect on his leadership as servant, we ask you to deepen our desire to imitate his example. May our exercise of the gifts you have given us be a faithful reflection of his presence at work in our lives. We make this prayer to you through Christ our Lord. Amen. So what I'd like to do tonight is just kind of give you guys some brief overview of some of the things that are always kind of on my mind and probably come out in different manifestations between sermons and talks and Bible studies and all the things that I do. But really they create a foundation of really how I approach leadership and community. And at the base of that, it's scriptural for me. If you know anything about me, you know that the Maundy Thursday service is my absolute favorite service. I love the uncomfortability of it. I love the reverence of it. But most importantly, I love what it does for us from a leadership perspective, because it's a tangible and outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. It's captured here in John. After he washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for this is what I am. So if I'm your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are they messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you do these things, you are blessed if you do them." Again, that comes from the Gospel of John, also my favorite gospel. And it's the foot washing. But Jesus gives us a beautiful and tangible example of what that means. So I'm going to give you guys an outline of what we're going to look at tonight. I'm going to use some of the things that I've learned and kind of cultivated over the years, and then I'm also going to let you guys hear from some of the people that have influenced me as well, because a lot of times there are much better speakers out there than me. But we're going to talk a little bit about what is servant leadership, because that is really at the core and what is kind of creates the foundation for whatever emanates from there. We're going to talk a little bit about how we create community as a leader, what your responsibilities can be, and how you guys can take some tangible examples. You will have some worksheets and some things to do. We're going to talk a little bit about why good leaders make others feel safe. And then at the crux of it, and as we turn towards kind of operationally defining what leadership looks like, we're going to talk about the best thing that we can do as leaders and turning that leadership into action. And then we'll have some questions and takeaways. So there'll be a little bit of kind of presentation pieces. There will be a time for questions. There is some paper there for other things, but if you want to write down some questions, and hold those until the end, you're more than welcome to do so. So let's talk a little bit about what a servant leader is, right? Servant leader in the corporate sense came around in the 1970s. Robert Greenleaf really started to issue this. We in the church have known what this is for thousands of years, right? And it swept up in the corporate world. I mean, to this day, I'm sure, several of you in your corporate experiences or secular experiences have heard this term, servant leadership. It's at the heart of who we are as Christians. But you'll look and see, and what I'll try to do is through the presentation, kind of give you examples of what this looks like, right? And what servant leaders are. They're mission driven, right? They're aligned with the mission, vision, and values and goals of who it means to be a follower of Christ, a disciple. They see the future. They're always scanning. They're looking, right? Understanding, what Tim just talked about, right? Understanding where we've been and where we're going. They engage and develop others. That's at the heart, right? We'll talk even more about that as we move forward. And they reinvent continuously, right? As you start to become a leader, as you start to cultivate that community, what it looks like for you, because it's always changing. This place is, I know we love our tradition here at Christ Church, right? But it continues to change, and we've got to continue to be open to see the future and to help reinvent that. Value results and relationships. This is so trite at this point, but it is. Somebody asked me how do you, I remember when I was in youth ministry, they would be like, how did you build this group and take 50 kids on a ski trip, right? One at a time. One at a time. There is no magic silver bullet. There's no email that you can send that's gonna get 500 people there. That's my new thing right now. I'm on a kick, as Father Tim can probably hear me in staff meetings. Emails. Passive, right? Again, embodies values. You see those values, right? Those values of trust. And that's one of the central pieces. But they are embodied. They're not things that you can just, when you say to somebody, and you're going to hear this a little bit later, but when you say to somebody, hey, trust me. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a feeling. That's based on a relationship. That's based on an engagement with each other. So we'll talk a little bit about what servant leaders versus leaders first. Because all the time, again, we in the Episcopal Church, we're in a very hierarchical organization, right? We're steeped in that. And so leaders are at the top, right? Not according to Jesus, right? Robert Greenleaf talks about this in his seminal essay, but he says, the difference manifests itself in the care taken by the servant first to make sure that other people's highest priorities, needs are being served. The best test, and difficult to administer, is, do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? Guess what? Each of you guys in here will say to yourself, oh, I don't know if I can, I always use the example of people will come to me and I say, hey, I want you to teach a Bible study. I'm not good at the Bible. You've heard more of the Bible than you know, and you know more of it than you ever believed. Again, when we talk about leadership, like some people may come to you and say, oh, or you may say to yourself, I'm not a leader. Everybody has the potential and capacity for leadership, especially servant leadership, right? That's at the core of who we are as disciples. I love the quote too. He says, if serving is below you, leadership is beyond you, right? It's in lockstep with almost every parable that Jesus talks about. It's in lockstep with everything that we kind of understand about Jesus' ministry. And we have the same capacity to have that ministry ourselves. We can't be Jesus, I'm not saying that, right? But we can follow in our Savior's footsteps. So again, that gives you a decent sense of when I talk about leadership, what I'm talking about. It's not authoritarian leadership. It's not, positional power. But here's where it starts to come into play with us and what we see, and I've identified you all as leaders, right? And this is something that you've heard, some of you may have heard me talk about, but when you're creating community, first you learn how to play together. Then you learn how to pray together. Then you learn how to serve together. Right? So what does that look like? What does that mean? So learning to play together, right? Most of you guys know I wish and hope and encourage you all, like I said up here, never lose the childlike wonder. And playing is part of where that community starts. That's where relationships start, right? When you had your first best friend, you didn't say, hey, you want to come with me and go sit in the church and pray all day? No. You said, let's go to the baseball field. Let's go play tag. Let's figure out and have fun and laugh together. Enjoy each other's company. Recognize, I always talk about, I can't remember who it is, but he talks about friendship is that moment where you recognize in somebody, really, you too? I thought I was the only one. So, the other piece that I want to, because some people may say, oh, playing is frivolous, it's not, you should go to work and do your things and, send all your emails. Playing scriptural. Look at Exodus, right? They rose early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to revel, to play. And as Episcopalians, we like to eat and drink too, right there. So. In Samuel, 2 Samuel, as David said to Michal, it was before the Lord, which chose me before thy father and before all his house to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore, I will play before the Lord. Some translations have that as dance. Why do you think we had the Kaylee? To play. Another thing Robert Greenleaf talks about, he says, in light of God's sovereignty and faithful love, play for Christians should be demonstrated and encourage hope, delight, gratitude, and celebration, right? Those are the things that come out as you begin to play, as you begin to gather with the people who are in your ministry. So don't forget those pieces. When you're having your first meetings, carve out time to check in with each other, right? One of the things that I do when we do our men's Bible study is we go around and we just say, what was your high and low for the week? Just a way to check in, to connect with that person, to play, to listen, to encourage, right? And sometimes you don't have to have a meeting. Sometimes you just have to play, right? But as you start to play, as you start to get to know each other, as you kind of figure out who each other is, the next step for us as Christians is we come and we play. We talk about this idea of lex orandi, lex credendi. Prayer shapes believing, right? It's something we actually learned if you study in seminary and it really pertains to liturgy, right? And what it means to have your life and your beliefs and your core and your mission shaped by your prayer. But again, yes, you have individual prayer. You can have that. But I don't know. I think sometimes God really delights when 2 or 3 are gathered in his name. He is there, right? Corporate prayer is important. Not only does it connect us with God, but it binds us together, right? Gets us all going in the same direction. One of the other things that I'll typically do, and we do quite a bit, in vestry meetings and things like this, is, well, how do we start off meetings? Prayer. Guess what? You don't, cover your ears, Tim. You don't need a priest to pray, right? You don't. And if you guys sit here and say, oh, I'm not good at prayer, guess what? You have this. Turn to page 810. Prayers and thanksgivings for all sorts of occasions. There's prayers for rain. There's prayers for travel. There's prayers for guidance. There's prayers for young people. Use this. You have so many of those tools at your fingertips, right? So, the other thing that I would say is when it comes to the play together and pray together, is lead by example, right? Set the tone within your ministry areas of understanding what it means by saying, hey, these are our rhythms. This is who we are. We're going to start our meetings with prayer. And it doesn't have to be that the priest has to come and do the prayer. In fact, in some ways, in your ministry context, the way that you serve others is by showing them that that lay people can pray as well, right? You're giving them an example of what it looks like. Oh, Doris can do that. I can do that, right? So, the last piece. This is where it gets kind of. It's the kind of culmination of it, but playing together and praying together become the catalysts for how you serve together, for how you treat each other within your ministry groups, for how you connect with each other, how that looks. The pieces that I would talk about as you think about how you serve are listening to your team members, right? Listening to those, and when they've got an idea, that's a great idea, right? The other piece too is help them draw clear lines between how they serve and meaningful impact. Brent does a great job of it when he's talking with the ushers about, guess what, ushers? You guys are the first people that a newcomer meets. That's an important job. It's not just handing out bulletins. Somebody's first. You don't know what it took for them to walk up those steps on 31st and O to come in. That's a huge responsibility, right? Help them in those little things. The people who helped Tiffany tonight cook. You guys just fed a whole room of people. If that's not Eucharistic, I don't know what is. But you gotta, one of the things that you all have to do is continue to help them identify and tie those things together. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we're gonna do some of that. I'm gonna operationally define that. For the time being though, I'm gonna have you guys listen to somebody who is one of my favorites, a guy named Simon Sinek, who I just found out from Chad. He actually even came to the Bureau. He's done an incredible amount on leadership. And this is one of his best talks on why leaders make others feel safe. As you listen to it, there's going to be more terms within the context of kind of corporate culture and business. Take that and just shift that into the church. Think about how those things and the ideas that he's presenting flow into the church, and think about how biblically and theologically centered they are.
There's a man by the name of Captain William Swenson who recently was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions on September 8th, 2009. On that day, a column of American and Afghan troops were making their way through a part of Afghanistan to help protect a group of government officials, a group of Afghan government officials who'd be meeting with some local village elders. The column came under ambush and was surrounded on 3 sides. And amongst many other things, Captain Swenson was recognized for running into live fire to rescue the wounded and pull out the dead. One of the people he rescued was a sergeant, and he and a comrade were making their way to a medevac helicopter. And what was remarkable about this day is, by sheer coincidence, one of the medevac medics happened to have a GoPro camera on his helmet and captured the whole scene on camera. It shows Captain Swenson and his comrade bringing this wounded soldier who'd received a gunshot to the neck. They put him in the helicopter, and then you see Captain Swenson bend over and give him a kiss before he turns around to rescue more. I saw this, and I thought to myself, where do people like that come from? What is that? That is some deep, deep emotion when you would want to do that. There's a love there. And I want to know, why is it that I don't have people that I work with like that? You know, in the military, they give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. In business, we give bonuses to people who are willing to sacrifice others so that we may gain. Yeah, right? So I asked myself, where do people like this come from? And my initial conclusion was that they're just better people. That's why they're attracted to the military. These better people are attracted to this concept of service. But that's completely wrong. What I learned is that it's the environment. And if you get the environment right, every single one of us has the capacity to do these remarkable things, and more importantly, others have that capacity too. I've had the great honor of getting to meet some of these who we would call heroes, who've put themselves and put their lives at risk to save others. And I asked them, why would you do it? Why did you do it? And they all say the same thing, because they would have done it for me. It's this deep sense of trust and cooperation. So trust and cooperation are really important here. The problem with concepts of trust and cooperation is that they are feelings. They're not instructions. I can't simply say to you, trust me, and you will. I can't simply instruct 2 people to cooperate, and they will. It's not how it works. It's a feeling. So where does that feeling come from? If you go back 50,000 years to the Paleolithic era, to the early days of Homo sapien, what we find is that the world was filled with danger. All of these forces working very, very hard to kill us. Nothing personal. Whether it was the weather, lack of resources, maybe a saber-toothed tiger, all of these things working to reduce our lifespan. And so we evolved into social animals, where we live together and work together in what I call a circle of safety, inside the tribe, where we felt like we belong. And when we felt safe amongst our own, the natural reaction was trust and cooperation. There are inherent benefits to this. It means I can fall asleep at night and trust that someone from within my tribe will watch for danger. If we don't trust each other, if I don't trust you, that means you won't watch for danger. Bad system of survival. The modern day is exactly the same thing. The world is filled with danger, things that are trying to frustrate our lives or reduce our success, reduce our opportunity for success. It could be the ups and downs of an economy, the uncertainty of the stock market. It could be a new technology that renders your business model obsolete overnight. Or it could be your competition that is sometimes trying to kill you. It's sometimes trying to put you out of business, but at the very minimum is working hard to frustrate your growth and steal your business from you. We have no control over these forces. These are a constant, and they're not going away. The only variable are the conditions inside the organization. And that's where leadership matters, because it's the leader that sets the tone. When a leader makes the choice to put the safety and lives of the people inside the organization first, to sacrifice their comforts and sacrifice the tangible results so that the people remain and feel safe and feel like they belong, remarkable things happen. I was flying on a trip, and I was witness to an incident where a passenger attempted to board before their number was called. And I watched the gate agent treat this man like he had broken the law, like a criminal. He was yelled at for attempting to board one group too soon. So I said something. I said, why do you have to treat us like cattle? Why can't you treat us like human beings? And this is exactly what she said to me. She said, "Sir, if I don't follow the rules, I could get in trouble or lose my job." All she was telling me is that she doesn't feel safe. All she was telling me is that she doesn't trust her leaders. The reason we like flying Southwest Airlines is not because they necessarily hire better people. It's because they don't fear their leaders. You see, if the conditions are wrong, we're forced to expend our own time and energy to protect ourselves from each other. And that inherently weakens the organization. When we feel safe inside the organization, we will naturally combine our talents and our strengths and work tirelessly to face the dangers outside and seize the opportunities. The closest analogy I can give to what a great leader is, it's like being a parent. If you think about what being a great parent is, what do you want? What makes a great parent? We want to give our child opportunities, education, discipline them when necessary, all so that they can grow up and achieve more than we could for ourselves. Great leaders want exactly the same thing. They want to provide their people opportunity, education, discipline when necessary, build their self-confidence, give them the opportunity to try and fail, all so that they could achieve more than we could ever imagine for ourselves. Charlie Kim, who's the CEO of a company called NextJump in New York City, a tech company, he makes the point that if you had hard times in your family, would you ever consider laying off one of your children? We would never do it. Then why do we consider laying off people inside our organization? Charlie implemented a policy of lifetime employment. If you get a job at NextJump, you cannot get fired for performance issues. In fact, if you have issues, they will coach you and they will give you support, just like we would with one of our children who happens to come home with a C from school. It's the complete opposite. This is the reason so many people have such a visceral hatred, sort of anger at some of these banking CEOs with their disproportionate salaries and bonus structures. It's not the numbers. It's that they have violated the very definition of leadership. They have violated this deep-seated social contract. We know that they allowed their people to be sacrificed so that they could protect their own interests. Or worse, they sacrificed their people to protect their own interests. This is what so offends us, not the numbers. Would anybody be offended if we gave a $150 million bonus to Gandhi? How about a $250 million bonus to Mother Teresa? Do we have an issue with that? None at all. None at all. Great leaders would never sacrifice the people to save the numbers. They would sooner sacrifice the numbers to save the people. Bob Chapman, who runs a large manufacturing company in the Midwest called Barry Waymiller, in 2008, was hit very hard by the recession, and they lost 30% of their orders overnight. Now, in a large manufacturing company, this is a big deal, and they could no longer afford their labor pool. They needed to save $10 million. So, like so many companies today, the board got together and discussed layoffs. And Bob refused. You see, Bob doesn't believe in head counts. Bob believes in heart counts. And it's much more difficult to simply reduce the heart count. And so they came up with a furlough program. Every employee from secretary to CEO was required to take 4 weeks of unpaid vacation. They could take it any time they wanted, and they did not have to take it consecutively. But it was how Bob announced the program that mattered so much. He said, it's better that we should all suffer a little than any of us should have to suffer a lot. And morale went up. They saved $20 million. And most importantly, as would be expected, when the people feel safe and protected by the leadership in the organization, the natural reaction is to trust and cooperate. And quite spontaneously, nobody expected, people started trading with each other. Those who could afford it more would trade with those who could afford it less. People would take 5 weeks so that somebody else only had to take 3. Leadership is a choice. It is not a rank. I know many people at the senior-most levels of organizations who are absolutely not leaders. They are authorities, and we do what they say because they have authority over us, but we would not follow them. And I know many people who are at the bottoms of organizations who have no authority, and they are absolutely leaders. And this is because they have chosen to look after the person to the left of them, and they have chosen to look after the person to the right of them. This is what a leader is. I heard a story of some Marines who were out in theater, and as is the Marine custom, the officer ate last, and he let his men eat first. And when they were done, there was no food left for him. And when they went back out in the field, his men brought him some of their food so that he may eat. Because that's what happens. We call them leaders because they go first. We call them leaders because they take the risk before anybody else does. We call them leaders because they will choose to sacrifice so that their people may be safe and protected, and so their people may gain. And when we do, the natural response is that our people will sacrifice for us. They will give us their blood and sweat and tears to see that their leader's vision comes to life. And when we ask them, why would you do that? Why would you give your blood and sweat and tears for that person? They all say the same thing. Because they would have done it for me. And isn't that the organization we would all like to work in? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Means to be a leader, and what I think it means to be a leader within the church. To go first, but to also create and cultivate that sense of trust, family, right? That you're in the pew and you look to the left of you and you look to the right of you. I mean, isn't it a beautiful, beautiful thing when each of us on a Sunday morning comes and kneels down at the railing, shoulder to shoulder, with different problems and different things, receiving the same sacrament, our hands open. But again, that's what we do. It seems like such a novel concept in the corporate world, but when the church is really being the church, that's exactly who it is. So, now we kind of switch, we kind of pivot a little bit. Giving you guys a sense of what I think leadership looks, or what leadership is, servant leadership. I've given you guys a sense of kind of my framework of how I build and cultivate that. But one of the things is that it's great to just sit here and pontificate about leadership and stories and that's such a great story. What does it look like here? How do we take that and in the psychology world we call it operationally define it? Right? For me, one of the biggest things that I believe, and this is at my core, is that the greatest thing that you can do for the building of the kingdom of God is to name the gifts and talents in others. I don't know about you guys, but it was an incredible moment when a teacher came to me in 5th grade and said, "Nate, you're really good at writing." Me? I thought I was a horrible writer. Right? That helped form my identity. That was huge. I think sometimes we as the people of God have the ability to speak into the lives of others, to see the things that they don't even see. It's the same way, we talked about being a parent, right? If you're a parent, you see in your kids things that they don't even see yet. Right? So us as leaders, in every capacity, whether you're the rector or just a lector, has the ability to do that. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do at this point is to kind of start to operationally define that and to take that into your ministry areas, to your ministry context. On your tables, you will see the Naming Gifts and Talents worksheet. It has two pieces to it. Because remember, I talked at the beginning about seeing the future, reinventing. So there's two different pieces to this worksheet. On the first part of the worksheet is to think about those that are in your charge, those that you are in ministry with. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are in charge. You know, for Brent, you're in charge of the or Ushers Guild, so you might, talk about that. But if you're in the Flower Guild, you might, list some of the people that are in the Flower Guild with you. And then on the other side, I want you to think about it. I want you to pray about it. I want you to really do some good kind of just mindfulness around what are those gifts and talents? What makes that person great? What benefits or what things do they bring to the ministry that are unique to them? And then on the backside, I want you to think about your different ministry contexts. And what are the gifts and talents and skills that are needed to continue to make that place thrive? Because I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Most of you guys got to the leadership positions you did because someone asked you. Someone asked you, right? I talked about it in my sermon a couple weeks ago. Most people come to church because somebody invited them. So, what I want you to do on the second piece is think about those gifts and talents and skills that you think that your different ministry areas are going to need in the next year, in the next 2 years, 3 years, next month. And then I want you to start to think about the person on the left of you in your pew and the person on the right of you. I want you to maybe, at a certain point, as people finish, talk to your table. Share with them the things that are important within your ministry. Here are the things that I'm looking at. Here's the things that we need. I know a guy, right? I know this person. They've been actually asking me about something about that, right? So I want it to be a little bit on your own, and then you want to move into a collaborative kind of discussion. Again, part of my goal is to not sit and have you guys hear me pontificate all night. I want you guys to have some tangible results and things that you take away from this. So I'm going to give you that time. I'm going to keep coming around to each table and kind of asking, but we're going to take about the next 10 to 12 minutes or so, and then you have one more activity after that. So any questions about that? Any questions?